There's a particular feeling that a lot of people had for the first time this year, and most of them haven't found the words for it yet. You watched a machine do, in about 8 seconds, a thing that used to take you most of a morning. And the strange part wasn't fear. Not right away. The strange part was a kind of quiet embarrassment. A small, cold thought arriving from somewhere in the back of your head, saying, "Was that all it was?" Because if a machine that has never had a body, never been tired, never needed the money, can do the thing you built a career out of, then what exactly were you being paid for? Most of the conversation about AI and work is about jobs. Which ones go, which ones stay, how long you've got. That conversation is useful, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't matter. But it skips the more interesting question. Not will this replace me, but why did watching it hurt in that specific way? That question has an answer. And it's older than the technology. Here's the story we tell ourselves. Work was fine. Work was meaningful. Then, around 2023, machines got good, and now meaningful work is under threat from outside. I don't think that's what happened. I think the thing that made us replaceable happened decades earlier, and we did it to ourselves, slowly, with the best of intentions, and mostly without noticing. AI didn't break down a wall. It walked through a door we had spent 40 years widening. To see the door, you need a distinction that almost nobody makes anymore, one made in 1958 by a political philosopher named Hannah Arendt in a book called The Human Condition. Arendt thought that we had made a catastrophic mistake by using one word, work, for 3 completely different human activities. And that collapsing them was going to cost us something we wouldn't be able to name once it was gone. The first she called labor. Labor is everything you do that keeps life going, and that gets consumed the moment it's done. Cooking a meal that's eaten. Cleaning a room that gets dirty. Answering the email that generates 2 more emails. Labor's defining quality is that it leaves nothing behind. It's a cycle, not a line. You don't finish labor. You just do it again tomorrow. And Arendt's point wasn't that labor is beneath us, it's that labor is endless by nature, and a life made only of it feels like running. The second she called work. Work is fabrication. You make a thing that didn't exist, and the thing stays. A table. A building. A piece of software someone will still be using after you've left. Work has a beginning and an end, and it leaves a world behind it, an object that outlasts the person who made it. That permanence is where a certain kind of dignity comes from. You can point at it. It's there when you're not. And the third she called action. Action is the hardest one, and it's the one that matters most here. Action is what happens when you appear in front of other people as a specific someone, when you say a thing in your own voice, take a position, commit, and become identifiable by it. Action is irreversible. It can't be undone, only forgiven. And it's the only one of the 3 that requires other people to be present, because its whole point is that through it you become someone in particular rather than an interchangeable unit of capability. Labor keeps you alive. Work builds a world. Action is how you become a person who existed. Now hold those 3 up against your actual job, and something uncomfortable happens. Think about what your job has become over the last 2 decades. The tickets. The status updates. The messages about the meeting to schedule the meeting. The reports that get read by nobody and filed forever. the quarterly deck that is structurally identical to last quarter's deck. Almost all of it is labor. Cyclical. Consumed on arrival. Leaves nothing behind. We did this deliberately, and we had reasons. We broke jobs into tasks because tasks can be measured. We measured them because measured things can be optimized. We optimized them because optimized things scale. Every step was locally rational and the whole thing was called productivity. But look at what that process actually is. To make a job measurable, you have to describe it completely. To make it scalable, you have to make it repeatable. And to make it repeatable, you have to strip out everything that depended on it being you doing it. That is the definition of making something substitutable. David Graeber noticed the symptom in 2013 that enormous numbers of people privately suspect their own job is pointless and feel a specific shame about saying so out loud. He was describing a workforce that had been converted almost entirely into labor and could feel it. So when a language model arrives and does that work instantly, it isn't performing a miracle. It's just the first entity honest enough to treat the job as what we had already turned it into, a function from inputs to outputs. The demo didn't reveal something about the machine. It revealed what we'd let the job become. Which brings us back to that cold little feeling from the beginning. It wasn't fear of poverty. Poverty is a slower, different fear, and it arrives later. It was the sensation of watching something confirm a suspicion you'd been carefully not looking at for years, that the thing you spent your one life doing was, in fact, a process. And processes don't belong to anyone. Here's the part one find genuinely sad. Most people, if you ask them what they're proud of at work, do not describe outputs. They describe the moment they said the unpopular thing in the meeting and were right. The person they trained who got good. The time they refused to ship something because it wasn't ready and took the blame for the delay. They describe action. Every time. And almost none of it appeared on their performance review. We built an entire measurement apparatus around the one category of work that was always going to be automatable, and we left unmeasured the category that makes a person irreplaceable, and then we're surprised that the machines came for exactly the part we were counting. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is the point where essays like this one usually start lying to you. The comforting move is to say, don't worry, the human parts are safe, just be more creative, more empathetic, more you. I don't believe that, and I don't think you should either. Plenty of people are going to lose real income doing work they were genuinely good at, and no amount of understanding Arendt is going to make rent. Telling a copywriter that action is irreducible is not a plan. It's a nicer way of saying nothing. I also don't think creativity is the safe harbor people claim. These systems are already good at producing things that look creative and getting better. If your defense is that you generate novel outputs, that is still an output, and it's a race you may not win. So this isn't reassurance. It's a diagnosis. What the diagnosis buys you is this: if the exposed category is labor, the endless, cyclical, consumed on arrival stuff, then you now know precisely which part of your working life to stop defending. Not because it's safe. Because it isn't, and clinging to it is the actual risk. What can't be handed over isn't a skill. It's a position. A model can produce the recommendation. It cannot be the one who decided. It cannot stand in the room and be answerable, cannot be the name attached to it, cannot be blamed, cannot lose standing for having been wrong, cannot be trusted more next time for having been right. Everything valuable that has ever happened to your career happened in that gap. Someone decided you were the person whose judgment they wanted, and they decided it because they had watched you take positions and owned them. That's not a soft skill. It's the only structurally non-transferable thing in the entire arrangement because its whole substance is that a particular person is standing behind it. So the useful question isn't what can I do that AI can't? It's how much of my week is spent producing outputs nobody will remember versus taking positions I'd be willing to sign? For most of us the honest answer is uncomfortable. That's fine. It was uncomfortable before the machine showed up. They just made it impossible to keep not noticing. One thing tonight. Open your calendar and look at last week. Not the outputs, the calendar. Find one block of time that was pure labor. Something cyclical consumed on arrival that left nothing behind and that a competent machine could now do at 3 in the morning for a fraction of a cent. You're going to lose that block eventually. That's not a prediction, it's just arithmetic. So decide now what you'd put there instead, one thing you would actually be willing to put your name on. Then, this week, do that thing badly in front of someone. Because the machines have taken the part of work that could be described completely. What's left is the part that requires a someone. You may as well start being one. It was who you're willing to be while producing it.